So as you can see, everything is overgrowing here. It's again this competitive growing together and helping each other. It's incredible. You don't have to do any work in here. There's a couple of grass seeds coming through, spider webs. Here I got some grass seeds. That's about the only maintenance I have is these guys. I don't want them to go to seed. So I just pull these guys out. And nothing gets to the ground here. Nothing starts to grow. A couple of weeds come through. And that's again that competitive growing where stuff is growing together. And there's many different varieties here of plants. So that's the maintenance. That's about it. Just pulling out those few weeds. And this stuff is growing so big that it can't even support its own weight, which is really incredible. Okay, so this here is 3 weeks of growth. Okay, so just look at this, how these beans have taken over this whole space. Again, we don't do any work in here. We're just waiting for the beans to get ready, and that's the extent of our work. What happens is we have other plants inside there that are helping this all come together. This area here is completely overgrown. There's like 10 different species in here, and we have so much wildlife inside there that we basically don't have to even look after it. So it's incredible how this stuff all works together and fills in and is very productive, incredibly productive and no work. And you gotta love that, the no work part of it. So I've got carrots growing in here. I've got tomatoes against the wall, and I want to get the carrots a little bit freed up from the alfalfa. So I do a little bit of chop and drop, and I put this underneath the tomatoes so they're nice and sheltered. And what's really funny is even though these carrots are small, they are delicious and they grow to a perfect size because they're in competition with the alfalfa. But this chop and drop really helps the tomatoes because I can get them off the ground. I have to tie them up. And what's really interesting is these tomatoes are completely free of any type of disease. So I'm going to tie them up. So this competitive gardening is very interesting because it really does work to cover the ground completely, and everything is sort of growing together. Very, very interesting. So I'm going to cut more alpha. And this is about 2 weeks of growth because we've cut it before. And if you look closely, there's other alfalfa already underneath here. That's chopped and dropped. I have another tomato growing in here. It's a cooking tomato. And if I'm not in a hurry, I don't really interfere with the competition that's going on. I leave it alone. I'm doing this because I want to get the tomatoes freed up so they get more sunshine. And that's all I do in this area here. So the carrots are going to fill in more. I could take the tops off of these just to make them less competitive. And this is maximizing the space incredibly well. There's so much growth here and so much that I can return to the soil. And by the fact that this is all growing so competitively and so organized, what happens is the root systems of all these plants are improving the soil immensely. So if you can grow this densely and have it facing a wall and the sun comes in here, this stuff grows like crazy. It's fantastic. So my rules have changed a lot in gardening. My experience here in Ecuador has made me garden very differently. The approach is very interesting. It's about using plant diversity to your advantage, using overcrowding. Let's call it overcrowding, where you basically cover the earth completely. You have no bare spots showing, and you're basically maximizing the growing potential of your soil. You're maximizing the growing potential of your yard, your sun exposure, your nutrient exposure to your plants. You're maximizing everything, so you have this jungle effect. You have this effect where everything is doing so well that it's actually hard for you to control. Something very interesting happens. You can have very, very poor soil, very sandy soil in my case, and the fact that something is growing on top of that soil changes that sandy soil into a rich, loamy, perfect, structured, well-bodied soil. So the next crop or the next plants that you put in there will have it a lot easier. So it is a perpetual motion machine of improving your soil. You have to add your compost. You have to get your soil to be better each time. And the garden will be incredibly invasive, incredibly gorgeous, and very productive. And it's up to the gardener to just push it, nudge it, so that you have this microclimate that is the best you could ever imagine. It's not that hard. It is about using your seeds in your garden to the best benefit. I have the advantage here. I have a growing season of 365 days, but nevertheless, you have to have cover crop seeds available to you, even if you grow them yourself or if you buy them. You need to have your earth covered in every which way. Weeds might not be such a disadvantage if they're covering the ground and are not very invasive and don't have a prolific seed and root mechanism. So always think about your garden as a canvas where you want to fill in every square inch. You want to get from A to B in such a way that you have the least amount of work. Let's face it, if you have an acre of land and you want to cultivate that entire acre, you do not have a lot of time to spend on one little section of your garden. Get it seeded, get it working, get it growing, move on, next area. That's the only way you're going to conquer anything that requires more than 8 hours a week of your time. So growing is a very different process now, because if you have an understanding of this completeness is a really good word, because you're completing a space like a paint by number. You have this entire area filled in. We have areas here that are so prolific. They have so many things growing inside here. And we hate to go inside there to disturb it, because there's so much life inside here. Wildlife. So think about it again. When you're gardening, think about your garden as a place where you can cover everything in such a way that it looks after itself. This interwoven mechanism where the roots from different diverse plants are helping each other get from A to B in such a way that they are providing different nutrients in the soil. They are conditioning the soil. If you go anywhere on our gravel walkways and you find a clump of grass growing, if you pull that clump out, the soil content around that root system is insane. It is a machinery of moving your soil forward to a direction where you can actually remove yourself from the garden a little bit, because your soil keeps getting better. The plants keep conditioning everything. It's that circular motion that you're looking for. Circular coverage, complete coverage, circular motion, and you'll end up with a garden that you can't even believe that you created it.